This is a presentation in which I say it's time for an African narrative. We need to build our identity as a people, to prepare our young people to raise for the future. You can fight only for what you love. Love what you respect, respect what you know. Those are the words of Adolf Hitler in Mein Kampf, a book that he used to raise German nationalism just before the Second World War. White people love themselves and respect white supremacy because they know about their supremacy. It's in their history, their present, their make-believe, and their vision for the future. All as portrayed by the total spectrum of domination of information that they've created to mold their reality. They project their aspirations, correct their real-life mistakes in movies, ads, documentaries, radio programs, education, books, poetry, laws, systems, and institutions, in which, in turn, they then manifest their realities. Through their control of media, storytelling, values that we use, the culture that we live by, they control the world narrative and reality. Sadly, every time that we use their narrative, they stamp their culture and values top of our minds, in turn programming our cognitive mapping. Each time our cognitive map is molded, the opportunity cost is our perception of ourselves is diminished. The challenge for us in this manipulation is that it was designed to make us less competitive for their domination. Because the world is a competition for resources and we keep playing according to their rules. Perception therefore becomes a psychological tool or weapon that is used in the race of life. We say in brand management, perception is reality. It's an indictment on us as Africans that a fictitious world of Wakanda had to be created by Hollywood to give us some form of inspiration as Africans. Because you will note that within that very same fictitious Wakanda, there was a real America. And the CIA savior comes from a real American institution. This is all part of the system of brand creation and the attenuation of the African identity. The reason that happened is because we, as the older generations of Africans, have not understood the importance of building and packaging an image of Africa's greatness for our children to inspire them. So we continue to leave our children in the hands of white institutions, which were mandated to actually attenuate black minds. So before Africans can even dream about a renaissance, we need to start understanding the power of the mind and imagination. We have to start afresh and package our values, culture, inheritance, write and rewrite our own history, so that we can package it and give it to our children as a reference point to build self-love, confidence as they move into the future. History is the lens we use to see into the future. For through history, we shape the future. As Africans, we need to remember that we are a great people. Greatness is in our DNA. Our ancestors built the pyramids. They taught the world to read and write. They created irrigation systems, started agriculture, created paper, and the first universities. We must use this heritage to build the esteem of our children, to grow their personal pride, lift their self-confidence, while using that to build a race identity and common interest. The biggest deficiency in African culture is our lack of awareness of our history, our inability to articulate our historical achievements and our contributions to humanity. Yet what's ironic is we are a culture of storytellers. It's counterintuitive. Therefore, most African nations are built on the premise that their history only starts with the arrival of the white man. Most black people's history starts with slavery, colonization, as if we didn't exist before the arrival of the white man. As a result, in their minds, we are slaves, colonized people who were advanced by whiteness. This is why we don't believe in ourselves and why our kids have no inspiration from Africa. This is why our people have no confidence to create, because they think they are not capable. However, the facts are, we civilized the world. We invented the first writing systems 3,000 years before Christ, while Europe started writing only 1000 BC. We invented geometry, architecture, astrology, which is what we use to build the geometrically aligned pyramids in Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia. Our geometric knowledge was used to build the great steles of the Sahara, the great Mutapa Empire in Zimbabwe, an empire that had cities of stone, where granite rocks were cut into perfect rectangles, layered on top of each other, without any mortar. Ashanti gave the world gold that built Cairo, Baghdad, Constantinople into the biggest cities of the time, where all the gold was flowing back from Europe as they came to buy from these big cities. And it's at a time that the biggest cities in Europe only had 20,000 people to 35,000 at most. The biggest university, and the one that still exists, and the first university, was built at that time in Egypt too. All this information says that Africa built the world. But this is information that's not sitting in the hearts and minds of Africans. So what use is it? For while our people don't know their history, the white-owned media is telling them that they didn't exist when Jan van Riebeeck got here in 1652. It says we can't farm, so that's why we need white farmers to feed us. We are corrupt, hence we need supervision from white people. And we can't own commercial banks or run businesses. But all in the while, the richest man on the continent is a black man called Dangote in Nigeria. Worth $15 billion. He's got more money than even white monopoly capital in South Africa. He's following in the footsteps of Jaja Fopobo and the palm oil families of old. And he made his billions despite Nigeria enduring a century of colonization. He banks his money in blackout banks, operates in a country where MTN South Africa makes its greatest profits, and the country is governed by black politicians. It's time we controlled the narrative in the minds of our people. Yes, we don't own much media, but we have a big advantage. Access to the most effective instant communication platforms that reach our people instantly and intimately. As people who come from a culture of storytelling, it comes without saying that we must speak to the souls of our people through rich content stories, using visual, text, audio, and graphic. In this connection generation, we must leverage technology and the sharing of information to talk to the hearts and minds of our people without intermediaries. Our people are under hypnosis, mind control. It's our responsibility to reverse this possession and mental occupation through smart counsel, interesting communication. Besides telling history, we must educate our people through knowledge about how the world works and how it's a competition between races. We need to simplify complex concepts and package them simply for our people to understand. Things like how slavery and colonization were the worst forms of corruption and crimes against humanity must be a given. The fact that our people lived a prosperous life on this land with sustainable farming practices, sustainable building practices, consuming without depleting for thousands of years before the white man came, which is why the white man had to come from a filthy, disease-ridden Europe to come to a continent with clean water. Animals are not depleted, trees are abundant, clean air and health. And only on the arrival of the white man do we start to see the depletion and the filthing of our environment. We need to teach our people how the Constitution has legalized European pillage by using European laws, systems, conventions, values, and cultures, while ignoring our customs, values, and laws. And yet, the laws that are supposed to prevail in our continent and our countries is supposed to be the law of the majority. But what is most important about this endeavor is that we must remember that we're competing with the biggest companies that have huge budgets, skills, and resources, like NASPA's huge 1 trillion rand largesse. But to dominate the share of mind, we must beat them at their own game. We must be more creative, informative, having captivating content that reaches people in the palm of their hand and evokes their emotions before they get contaminated by mainstream media. So I'm appealing to our rich African business people to invest in a project in which we start to digitize the history and heroes of Africa. It is sad that the history of the Khoisan exists in books that were written by white men. Mutapa is superseded by the fictional creation of Sun City. It boggles my mind how when you Google the city of Benin, you only see scant information and you see nothing on Jaja of Opobo. Yet we say that Africa must leapfrog into the fourth industrial revolution. But how do we do that without content? This is the information age, but we're not creating digital information, digital content. With what shall we lift our youth and their spirits? How shall we inspire them if we do not have tangible, accessible, discoverable history? For how long should the British and Americans continue to write our history in their own voice? For this, I'm appealing that we need resources to harness and package our history in a manner that is going to inspire our youth.